This is Ravensbrück Television with a talk show with Dan Wolf. The hosts are Ljiljana, Heise and Matthias Heyl. And we are talking to Dan Wolf, whose ancestors were more or less the Hamburg Marx brothers. They did Plattdeutsches Volkstheater together with film, music, theater, and bringing together all kinds of cultural means to get people laugh and think. I think Dan didn't know too much about this for a long time until Jens Hockerieder, a Hamburg-based film director, found him when researching on the story of the Wolf family. Dan, I would like to start with some questions, naming some items and asking you how much of it is in you. How much Hamburg is in you?
Oh, I think a lot of Hamburg is in me. The more I go there, the more I feel at home. When the first time I was there, somebody put food on the table. I was 3,000 miles from my home here in California, and the first thought was, oh, I'm home. So I think a lot of Hamburg is in me, whether I knew it or not. It's part of my blood. It's part of my DNA. It's part of my heart and soul, really.
How much Plattdeutsch is in you?
Not so much Deutsch, but more Platt. So it was something I had to learn. I had never heard of this language, this dialect, until I met Jens Hockerieder in 1999. So maybe it's in my DNA, but it needed to be woken up a little bit before it could come out.
You told me in the beginning that you are prepared to do a short performance in Plattdeutsch, maybe.
I am.
Would you be willing to do so right now?
Yes, why not? So this is my version of the Tudelbahn song. I call it Tudelbaum. If you listen closely, you'll hear some samples. And also the Flensburger plop top is in there in the background too. Here we go. An der Eck steht Jungen mit dem Tudelbaum. In der Anna einem Butterbrot mit Käse. Wenn die bloß nicht mit den Beinen Tudel kommt und der liegt hier auch allen ob den Nase. Und die Raser mit den Dazzle getting can't steam. Und die Bitze ganz gehurig ob der Tongue. Wenn die obseits sagen, die hätten nicht weh done. Das sind Klacks für so ein Hamburger Jung. On the corner stands a boy with a hoop. In his other hand is butter bread with cheese. Hopefully he doesn't stumble with his feet. Oh, oops, there he goes. Yo, he falls and hits his nose. He wrestles with his head against the curbstone. He bites his tongue deep inside his throat, but he jumps up and says, check it, I'm bulletproof. That's nothing, ain't nothing for the Hamburg City youth. Clown, Apple wird wie Clown. Ruck, Uber in Zaun. Ein jeder aber kann es nicht, denn muss aus Hamburg sein. Steal, apples we will steal. Quickly, let's jump over the fence. Not everybody can do this. You must be from Hamburg City. Check it. For centuries on corners and ciphers we congregate. Style to make the world dance, my art it elevates. I stood in line for bread and cheese. Governments please. We a nation of refugees from overseas. Survival tactics, survivalists from the action brought by racist factions. Only mathematics if they fuck with this subtraction. Attracting weak-minded right, white, Aryan devil practice. Before we concentrated in camps, temples got destroyed. I burn bright like 8-day oil lamps. Catch a glimpse but don't stumble. Battle contemporary gladiators, they want my world to crumble. I call this a comeback. You better ask where I've been to arrive where I'm at. Born by the bay, simple twist of fate, USA. Went back in time, you know I still relate. I steal my future back, who stole my past? I fed a culture, they fed us gas. I'm back to get clean for future scenes. Dreams led me to my voice, to my quest. Steal my future back, who stole my past? Fed a culture that fed us gas. Back to get clean for future scenes. Dreams led to be a future in this quest. So, help me find my history. Yo, help me find my wealth. Love me unconditionally. Teach me how to carry weight inside myself. 1, because I need it. 3, I'm in between. The 2 and the 4, that's how I claim my history. They had 40 days and 40 nights. I got this mic to do it right.
Cool. Why is this your song?
Why is this my song? Well, the first time I heard the Tudelbahn song, there was something about the way that the rhyming structure lived. And so I thought immediately that I needed to make it a rap. But then I had to ask myself what was different about my experience from my great-grandparents' experience, and to use the political energy that they had in different versions of the song, to use the fun and the kind of imagery, this kind of playful imagery of the boy on the street falling down and stealing the apples and running away, jumping over the fence, the pride that one has in their city and in their state and in their home. So I think all of those things came together and allowed me to see this version of the song as a direct connection to my lineage, but also as a way for me to put my own print on it, to talk about what it means to be third generation after the Holocaust, to be second generation here in the United States, and then, yeah, to really combine what I say, my culture and my creativity, and how they collide and become something different.
I think still every Hamburg child learns the song. It goes back to your family. Mm-hmm. It is your song right now. You translated it into our time. Mm-hmm. What do you think, what does it mean to you to be the son of your father, the grandson of your grandparents, and the great-grandchild of your great-grandparents? Oh,
yeah. These
translations. Cut it. What does it mean to you to be the child of your parents, the grandchild of your great-grandparents? What does it mean to you to be someone with a German Jewish background?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all very complex. So to be a son of my parents really has to do with engaging with blind spots, I think, in their history, and going to places where either they didn't know they needed to go or avoided them because of the way that they saw their parents' lives unfolding after they came here. So for me, to my parents, it's really about being a historian and a torchbearer and a keeper of this narrative. But it's really easy for me because I walked into a theater when I was 10 years old and I thought, I'm home. I want to be here for the rest of my life. And this was 15 years before I knew anything about the Gebruder Wolf. And so how this, so it makes sense to me that I am the grandchildren of my great-grandparents, because unknown to me, as this 10-year-old boy, I fell in love with theater. As a 15-year-old kid, I fell in love with hip-hop. And the way that storytelling and creativity and expression all comes together in me makes it really clear that I am a descendant of these people, and that, like, this art is my family business in a certain sense, even if it skipped my parents. So there's a disconnect there between me and my parents because they're not artists. It also is a responsibility that I have to my great-grandparents, specifically I feel my grandmothers. There's a kind of a maternal energy there that, because I knew them both growing up and I knew who they were as older people, this work and this history becomes important to me because, yeah, I want to keep their memories alive. I want to keep them alive, if for nobody else, for myself. And this song and this story is a real clear way of doing that.
Thank you. Now taking a detour, getting back to a safer place, how much California is in you?
Well, I'm definitely a California boy. I mean, if you look at the way that I act, I'm very free and open. Not to say that everyone in California is that way, but I guess the best way I can say it is a memory I have when I was maybe 10 or 8, and I went for lunch at my grandfather's house. And my grandfather, Donut Wolf, was a very proper man. He would wear a suit on Sunday for lunch and sit in the corner and smoke his cigar. And I remember him and my father fighting because my sister and I came to the table dressed like California kids, wearing shorts and t-shirts, and we weren't wearing a suit or our Sunday clothes. And I thought, but this is who I am, you know. So I think I am California. My language, my dialect, my approach to life, my sunny disposition, I guess you would say. But also the flip side of it is that the history is very heavy, I think, in my body and in my brain and in my soul. So there is this balance between like the darkness that we get in San Francisco with the fog and the sun disappearing and the sun that happens here in Berkeley. Yeah, I think I'm this weird mix of all these places, and that's why the story is so important to me.
How much Judaism is in you?
Yeah, I mean, I have a strong foundation of Judaism, but also I have a strict, what's the right word? I'm very suspicious about organized anything, and so I feel a lot. I would say I'm culturally Jewish. I'm connected to the stories and the lineage. And when the holidays come around, even though I don't observe Shabbat or, a lot of the smaller holidays, I do feel a guilt and a disconnect. And I look at why my family is disconnected from ourselves in this way. And I look back to the Second World War as this moment of fracturing ourselves, because I don't feel always safe to express my Judaism. And I think that that's a remnant of the past. Again, I use this word DNA a lot. It's a subconscious thing that has become a conscious thing in my adult life. I'm married to a Jewish girl. It's important to my kids to know that they're Jewish, but we're not religious. We're not practicing. So it's just in us as opposed to something we activate all the time.
But you're a practicing rapper. How much rap is in you?
As much as I'll let in. Yeah, the idea of this culture, this rap culture, of a culture that's coming from a disenfranchised, marginalized group of people in this country, Black Americans. There's something about that I connected to when I was younger, and that made me feel like if my culture and my identity was other, that was an other that felt, I don't know, it was too close to me. You know, these German and Hebrew sounds that take place here, the sounds, that's not what I heard here in California. I didn't feel comfortable saying that. But here came this other language, this other culture that also somehow shared in the concentric circles, like, we're not the same, but we share a history of pain and of suffering and of racism. And so if my other wasn't cool and acceptable or accessible for me as a young person, this other one was. So I guess I've maybe substituted my Jewish identity with my hip hop identity. Maybe the psychologist would have a field day with that one.
How much Trump is in you?
Zero Trump. Get that word out of my mouth.
How much Corona is in you?
Hopefully none. I mean, we're pretty safe here. We're pretty healthy. But I'm seeing everyone starting to go crazy a little bit and start to push the boundaries out. And I'm not ready for that. So I'm kind of like, ready.
How much survivor is in you?
I think more than I thought. I think more than I allowed in initially. I'm very blessed. I was very privileged in my life. I grew up in a very safe way, in a very comfortable way. But I feel like I'm here. I'm lucky. I'm like a dandelion seed. You know, these flowers you pick with and you blow and they flow everywhere. And 90% of these seeds, they don't land in the ground and start a new flower. But I feel very blessed that I did. So I think I'm a lot of survivor in me.
How much resistance is in you?
Not as much as I think should be. I think I fight this. I want to fight. I want to fight the system. And I also grew up in a safe, comfortable way. So how I can combine my understanding of the injustice in the world with a real active pursuit of this justice for the present moment. I think this is a balance that I'm always fighting with. I'm always challenged with. And I surround myself with people who are resistant, who are freedom fighters in their own ways, on various ways. And I aspire to their power and to their clarity and to their energy. And I learn a lot from folks like that. And I need those people in my life.
How much politics is in you?
The older I get, more and more politics. I think as a young man, didn't want to be burdened, but that comes again from privilege. And I have to come to terms with that. And I think everything is political. The more I learn, where the clothes you wear, the words you use, the words you don't use, where you shop, where you don't shop, the kind of music you listen. I mean, everything is political. Everything in the sense that it makes a statement about how you see the world and who you are in the world. So yeah, the older I get, the more power I find in politics and the more interest and the more engagement. Yeah.
How much art is in you?
Yeah, I mean, I see the whole world as a creative opportunity. So I think a lot of art is in me. I think I feel most comfortable in a space where I'm expressing something. And expressing isn't just like, oh, I need to get this out of my body. It's more like I have to come up with a very specific question that I, as Dan, am being challenged with. What is it? What does it mean to have a culture of remembrance? What are we trying to forget if we don't have a culture of remembrance, right? As I look around in my country and I see we don't remember anything. We want to forget everything. So why? And so all of a sudden it becomes an artistic challenge, or I'm very curious about how to take all this stuff in the world and make it meaningful and make it powerful and have some sort of agent for change through the voice of the individual.
Thank you. How much feminism is in you?
Yeah, I have to be more and more aware and more open. I think as a young man, not much. As I've become a father to a young girl, and as I've become a better partner to my wife, the more feminist I've become and the more challenging I am to this kind of male norm that we all live in, this patriarchy that we're all forced to be a part of. And I also notice where my biases are, and I notice when I'm blindly going to a place because of the box that I've allowed myself to grow up in, as opposed to really being sensitive and taking in the moment. For me, it's a learning process, and I'm open to learn, and I have amazingly strong, powerful, smart women in my life and in my family, and I continue to listen and learn from them.
How Afro-American are you?
Yeah, I think as much as I can be. I think this is a culture that I understand, but I'm not a part of. And so I think growing up, I was very fascinated, as I said earlier, because it was a different other than my own. But I'm a Jewish American kid from California. And so no matter how different I feel, no matter how non-white I feel in this society, I'm not black. So I can walk the streets. I can go running without getting killed. I can walk into a store without having the store shop owner following me around. I don't have people immediately thinking that I'm negative with everything that I do. So it's more in my mind than in my skin color. And the older I get, the more I realize the real struggles that African-American folks deal with, that these microaggressions, from people moving their purse to people locking their doors, from people crossing the street. And so it's a reckoning of realizing that no matter how much affinity I have for a culture or love I have for a people, I'm not a part of that community, and I have to accept that, and I have to figure out where I fit in, and also know when I have to step back.
2 of the short questions left. How German are you?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty German. I have very I love certain traditions. I love certain order. I love people to be on time. I love language. I think I have a great sense of humor when I'm not too heady about things. You know, so my friends in Germany teach me a lot about just German culture and the non-stereotypical, just like real people. Yeah, so I mean, I feel so engaged. I forget that I'm not from Hamburg when I'm in Hamburg. So I think I'm kind of like a small puppy who thinks they're big, you know, like, or a big puppy who thinks they're small. Like, I want to sit on your lap, but I'm like taking up the whole couch because I don't belong there, but I feel like I belong there. So it's a psychological excavation there. Yeah.
How much of Ravensbrück is in you?
I think there's a lot. I think Ravensbrück, you know, when we came there in 2006, it was really emotionally hard and psychologically hard. I'd never stayed overnight at a former concentration camp. The power of the barracks, the hostel where we stay, and the history of that was overwhelming. The location was overwhelming. But as time has gone on, it feels more and more like home. I think maybe now I've been there 4 times, and I think over these 4 times I've probably spent 25 or 30 nights sleeping there. So that's substantial. That's a lot of time to spend in a place. And when you spend that much time in a place, it starts to become your own, and you sometimes forget the history. You're only living in the present moment. So I often have these moments where I'll like flash on an image in my mind, and then I'll realize that image was from a moment that I experienced in Ravensbrück. I feel very comfortable there. I think part of it is because of you and your team. You're very accepting and open. Even thinking of 2017 when we needed some more research and it was late at night, and you said, yeah, we went to the security guard and we opened the museum and we got to go back inside. So, I mean, it feels like home to me. It feels like a place where family and friends and ghosts and memories of good and bad kind of come together and have really shaped my adult life. I mean, the Sound in the Silence project was conceived there while we were there in 2006. So it's a big part of who I am, and I talk about Ravensbrück all the time, and I tell the story all the time. People are blown away from the history because either they've heard of it or they never knew about it. And it's such a unique place that I feel honored that it accepts me as a part of its story.
You were a quite young man when you arrived in Ravensbrück in 2006.
Yeah.
And you came back in 2017. What changed in between?
Well, the first thing is we lost Jens in 2013. So that was a big change. Yeah, I mean, when I arrived in 2006, we were there to do hip-hop theater workshops with German youth from the area. I had no idea how important location was to the creative process. And I was very scared and timid. And, you know, by the time 2017 rolled around, I was married. It was 11 years later. I had 2 children. And this idea of life as this broader, bigger picture had grown for me. I mean, 2006, I was really young. I was in my early 30s, I think, or late 20s. But age doesn't really matter because mentally I was like a teenager, basically. And so I think the way that life kind of comes and goes, and the highs and lows, and the pain of loss, and the clarity of who I am as a person. I think I'm much clearer about who Dan is in the world and what Dan is trying to do. I think in 2006, I was trying to be like a famous rapper. And now I know what my role is, about how I use art to engage myself and history and other people. Yeah, it felt like coming home because I'd been there before. And then all of a sudden, everybody had grown up.
And you came home again in 2018,
Mm-hmm.
and there was something new.
Yes.
Not only the space, the spot, but the survivors, the ladies.
The ladies, yeah.
How did this change your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it changed it greatly because from 1999 when I met Jens until 2018, the project as we had created it was working with people who are either ghosts or memories, but they weren't present physically. They weren't alive. So you could go into these places and you could explore them with a certain sense of distance. There's this idea of Marian Hirsch who has this concept of post-memory, right? A memory that you didn't have, but you've either experienced it through your DNA, or you've heard the stories, or you've done so much research and you're combining this book learning and this emotional learning so it feels like a memory that is actually yours. And only in this concept of post-memory could we go, in theory, can one go to a memorial site and do anything else other than mourn for the loss of the people who are there. I love this concept because I feel like all my work is kind of post-memorial in a sense, which means that I can go into a place and I can learn about the history and I can experience the location. And then from the tension between those 2 points, I can create something and express myself. But when a survivor walks into the room, you have a different responsibility. You have a different set of rules. It can no longer just be your imagination and your fantasy and what ifs, the magic if, as we say, but it has to be sensitive and connected to the reality of a real person's real lived experience. And you have to be reverent and honor them, and you have to love them, and you have to support them, and you have to protect them in a way that you can. And it's not helpful for me to just kind of say, well, I'm the artist, I'm going to do this. You have to bring your creativity in contact with the lives and experiences of real people. It made me very sensitive to their experience. It made me very nervous. I really wanted them to like what it was we were doing and in a way give their blessing and say, yes, keep going. This is good work. And I think I, as the others, were very tense until the moment that it became clear that we had the blessing. And I feel very emotional when I think about the relationships that we built specifically in 2018 that allowed us to say, like, okay, whew, the work is good. The work is needed. It's not just in our brain that we think this is something important, but the people who experience this also find this opportunity for healing. Because for me and my family, this is where I started. It was an opportunity for healing because I feel like we're not healed in my family. I feel like the wound is still pretty open. My grandparents couldn't deal with it. It happened to them. My parents couldn't deal with it. It happened to the people that they loved. And so this idea of post-memory and this idea of me having this distance allowed me to play with it in a different way. But when those ladies walked into the room, I felt like I wanted my grandmother to be proud of me. And so that's kind of became, the whole project shifted into supporting them and taking care of them and making sure that it was something that was vibrant for them.
Dan, thank you so much for this part.
Thank you.
Actually, I'd like to ask you a little bit more about the project Sound in the Silence meets Generation, das Generationsforum. I'd like to know how closely this project is connected to the location, to Ravensbrück. And because of Corona, I'd like to know, and the special challenges, is it possible, what do you think, to transfer your work, your workshops, the methods in different learning spaces like universities?
Mm-hmm. So what was the first question again?
Yeah, the first question was how closely your this project is linked with a location, with Ravensbrück, because you did these workshops already at other locations too, right?
Yeah. So I think it's intrinsically linked with, I think the project is deeply linked with Ravensbrück because, for one, the idea came to me while I was there. Mm-hmm. So I always have this origin story, this moment of birth in my mind. And I often, when I'm sitting near the area of the former crematorium right there by the lake, on this wall, this is where I was sitting when I had the idea for the project, because I sat there and I watched the students come by bus, you know, and then I think either Jens or Matthias told me that these were students that were on a tour, 7 days. They saw 4 different locations, and it was kind of like a factory, in and out, with no real depth of experiencing of the place and of the people and of the history. It was more like, go to the place, see the place, feel sad, maybe cry, go have some pasta, get back on the bus, kind of this factory process. And we were sitting there for 4 days, and so I thought, So at first we sat outside the crematorium, and there was these young people who were on these tours, and they were sitting there with their phones, and they were playing music, pop music. And immediately I thought, that's so rude. Why would you play this music here? And then my second thought was, oh no, I just became my grandparents immediately. And then I thought, why are these young people playing this music? Because in my house was completely silent. Nobody said anything about the history. And when I was in 5th grade, I asked the question about the family history, and I just remember people crying and trying to tell me, but they couldn't. So there's that moment in history and that memory. There's the moment of sitting outside the former crematorium at Ravensbrück. And those memories came together, and I thought, no, they need this music, because we are all being forced to be quiet about this history. We are all forced to be silent, and there's sound in this silence. There's pain and screaming and crying. So because of that moment, Ravensbrück is deeply linked to my discovery of this new level of the project. So that's the first step. The second step really was in coming back in 2017. Just for the record, I had mentioned many times to Jens in this 10 years, hey, let's go and do this again at Ravensbrück. It was such a big experience. I had never been to a place with a history like Ravensbrück, with the female energy and the guards, and living in a hostel, which is now which was the former barracks of the guards. So all of this crazy history, as Jens would say, coming together. So it makes Ravensbrück incredibly important in the concept of the project. But then there's the people there. There's Matthias, there's Angie, there's Ingrid, there's you, there's everybody who I've met, you know, and I'm not naming people. I'm sorry for those who I'm not naming right now. But relationships to place and time, it's also about the people. And in many other locations, we've been told, okay, you can come and do your tour and then go away. But at Ravensbrück, the door was opened. They said, no, come inside. You have an opportunity. We want this. We need this. We want to think about this way of working. Watching in 2017, the education team create education art workshops made me feel like I was seen and like I was heard, and like Ravensbrück really understood what my intention was. And because of that, then you have this emotional connection. You don't only have the conceptual connection, but you have a deep emotional connection. And then we get invited to come and be with the ladies. And so our relationships are building and growing. And now we've been there 2006, 2017, 18, and 19, and now we're doing this. And so Ravensbrück becomes the partner that can see the future of the project. We're looking, because the project is really about, let's look at the past, understand how we feel about it in the present moment, and then build towards a more just collective future. And Ravensbrück and Matthias and the team really got that. So all of those pieces make it, you know, I think we've had the most successes with the project on Ravensbrück because of that culture that is being created.
You had already various rap workshops in Ravensbrück. Last year you had the opportunity to show the result to the survivors. I'd like to know what were the reactions like. And you have worked with survivors many times. What were their reactions to the project in general, and what were their reactions to rap?
Yeah, so I think their initial reaction to the project was skepticism, like, what are these people going to do? And so, but they were so curious in 2018. They would show up and they would come to the workshops. All of a sudden it was like a star was showing up at your workshop, and the door would open and Batsheva or Judith or Emmy or Zelma would walk in, and you're just like, okay, all right. And that year I didn't have my own workshop, so I got to observe. So I would watch what would happen with the participants when they walked into the room, because everybody wanted them to feel like they were being respected. And one specific time we were in a theater workshop, and one of the survivors had told the theater workshop leader, I love theater, I'm coming to your workshop every day. And I thought that was great, and I think it was a lot of stress for the workshop leader, because he really didn't want to disappoint her or make her feel bad about anything. And so she sat inside the workshop, and you could feel everybody in the workshop was like, and then she raised her hand and she said, I think I'm gonna leave now, because I can see that everybody in the room is very tense because I'm here. And everyone in the room went, and they said, yeah, no, we want you to stay, please don't go. And what I realized was everybody in the project is very nervous about what the ladies think. But there was a changing moment. There was a moment where they did see what we were doing, that we were honoring their stories. And I think a few of them have even said, this is my dream, to see many languages, many religions, many genders coming together over this work. This is what I've been waiting for my entire life. Batsheva took me, grabbed my arm and walked with me and said that to me. And I had to do everything that I could not to just like fall into a pile and just start weeping, because this is what I want, you know, we're doing it for them. And their reaction to rap at the beginning was, I think, like how every 80-year-old or 90-year-old reacts to rap who doesn't grow up in this culture. They don't understand it. They know what they see on TV. They see people in a certain way and in a certain light, in a certain way that the story is told about African Americans and black people. They don't see the connection. I remember Batsheva said to Tommy, who's 6 foot tall, black man, what are you doing here? You know? But when they saw, I think they really love to see the vibrancy and the energy of young people engaging with history. And I think Selma said, yeah, none of you are going to be fascists now. I know this for sure. So I think they also changed. I think they went from, I don't know, to like, when are we coming back? I can't wait to see this again. And Batsheva last year in 2019 came up to me and said, where's Tommy? Which really said, like, I love this boy. Where is he? I miss him. You know, which is the greatest arc to the journey of them, because I think they feel seen and respected. And I think they feel our energy, and we feel theirs too.
Yeah, rap is a very complex and diverse art form, I guess. Nevertheless, images of hypermasculinity play a popular role in it.
Yeah.
What are your experience, especially when you work with teenagers? I mean, it's an important, it's a period in life where the search for identity is so important. And gender roles and stereotypes are important too in this time. So how do you reflect that in your workshops or in your work or however?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first part is like a personal education with real people. So I think if we, there's a lot of unpacking in that question. I think in the bigger sense of rap culture and Black culture, right? We as a world have been fed a very slim identity structure of who they are, but the reality is they are as complex and diverse as any other culture and art form. So Black men are not just gangsters; they're intellects, they're leaders, they're business owners, they're fathers, they're artists, they're chefs, they're nerds, they're historians. So this idea that their identity has been taken away, like the complexity of their identity has been taken away, coupled with the overarching media's desire to paint them as a singular thing, makes rap music live in a certain lane, right? I'm not saying that there isn't hypermasculinity or stereotyping in and outside of rap, but I am saying that rap and hip hop, and by extension Black culture, is way more diverse than the world allows it to be. So for me, how I deal with these I come from a very different tradition of rap. I come from an early 90s tradition where language and culture and knowledge of self and self-empowerment and community empowerment is what's at the forefront. And it's only as more and more gangster rap got marketed to people that this idea of this like hyper masculine man has taken over the identity for rap. So we have this idea of consciousness and how we bring our consciousness into rap, this knowledge of yourself and knowledge of community. So I battle it by just being authentic to myself. And when I'm working with young kids, I try to show them that there's a mask that they've been taught to put on, but the work that we're really getting to is what's coming from their soul, their dreams and their wishes and their desires. And, you know, I work with 60-year-old white women and teach them how to rap. And they're always like, oh, and I say, don't be like, hey, yo, yo, yo. No, just be authentic to you, because that's all hip hop was born out of, was this personal authenticity. And so a lot of this hypermasculinity and stereotypes is about this male ego that's trying to fit in and trying to say like, yo, I'm powerful, I'm strong, I'm gangster, I'm street. And half of those people are just acting anyways, doing what they think you want. And unfortunately, that style of rap sells. And so my work is about combating that and showing that poetry and vulnerability and emotion and impressions and ideas and feelings and thoughts can be intertwined with this rhythmic expression mode. And so I'm out there just trying to be an example of a different way to be a rapper.
Okay. And what do you think? What can your method achieve? And what are the special possibilities of this cultural education? What can your method, your way to teach also, let's say, more than conservative learning opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think my lessons extend from a more kind of social, emotional place. Like, I think that my work can cultivate empathy and connection between diverse groups of people. It can demystify history as a thing that is over and is done and in the past, and actually bring it into more of a conversation as like a continuum, as a path that we're all walking on. Today is not today by itself. Today is today because tomorrow or yesterday is over and tomorrow hasn't happened yet. And so this idea of like, Yeah, I mean, in my family, my mother has been to Germany once. She's never been to a memorial site. I think emotionally it's too much for her. So my work can show her that by exploring this dark history in a number of ways, educationally, experientially, expressively, that there's a whole other layer of connection and understanding to uncover, right? So it's not just about the facts and the feelings and the sides that get picked. It's about how it's all fluid and it's dialectical in a conversation with each other, and it's back and forth. And this idea of Lena leading her rap workshop last year and I stepping back and saying, lead it, and then noticing when she hit these walls and me just saying like, oh, I can help you with this. Oh, you need help with this. Oh, I can help you with this. As opposed to saying like, no, this is the method and the way to do it. That creates trust. That creates a depth of a relationship where we can hear and see and respect each other. I can respect her methodologies. She can respect my methodologies. But I also respect her space to say like, do it your way, you know, and that we all have different methodology and different ways to get to a moment where we can see each other for the first time, or maybe see each other really for the first time. So yeah, so I think it's really about empathy. It's about connection. It's about understanding the other in a new way. It's about placing yourself in history as opposed to standing outside of history and just watching it as a spectator. It's about finding a depth of curiosity in space and time and people. And these are the things that for me empower me and inspire me so deeply. Like I could never talk about myself, like it's really hard to talk about myself as a solo artist. I can only really express who I am in relation to the other people that I work with, because I get so much depth of knowledge and experience and understanding from working with people. And I think that is what the power of the project is that understanding of the other.
And I also like to know how important is the idea of an open process in your work and your workshops, and how difficult is it if you worked already for so many years with the same people probably and at the same place. Yeah, how is it hard to stay open?
It's a balance, I would say. I think the openness is quite important, because the power of sound in the silence is about who is in the space working together. So if we have a hip hop artist and a dancer and a sound engineer or a sound artist working together, the outcome of the process is quite different than if we have an actor and a musician. So I think being open is incredibly important. One, because we don't have a lot of time. In some cases, we're there 7 days, 4 days, 10 days, who knows? And I think it's complex for the participant who's never done it before, because I'm asking a lot of you. Trust me. Hey, we just met. Totally trust me. We're going someplace that I don't even know what it's going to look like when we get there. But I trust the artists that I work with. They're phenomenal. And so I think the open process of it is really quite important, because it allows every individual who's engaging with the project and the collective of the project to figure out what the end looks like together. And quite often what happens is I start to get some ideas. I have a structure in my mind that I maybe want to work with, but that's more to give the other people something to argue against, so that they say, no, that's not a good idea. This is a better idea. And then I say, yes, it is a better idea, right? Because if I say we start here in the conference hall, and then we move out to the water, and then we move into this room, into that room, and then we try it, and people say, no, forget those two places. We go straight here, which happens quite a bit, where I give the artists my big idea But my secret is I just want them to argue with me so the idea will change. I want them to tell me what's better than my idea. So at the end, all of our ideas are together. Yeah, and then they go off on their own, and then they come back to me and they say, no, that doesn't work. This is what works. And I say, good, yeah. So this idea of an open process allows all of us to come together and direct the project to land ultimately where it's going to land. Someone like Kat, who's our dance teacher, the project would not be what it is today if we had not met Kat 5 years ago. Because she pushes me to be better at what I'm doing. She has a ton of brilliant ideas. She always ups the level of like the technical part. No, we need a light to go here so we can cast a shadow, when I'm just thinking about how we can get all of these things to work together. So the openness of the process is really important, because we don't know where we're going to land. It all depends on the location, the artists, the participants, the weather, if we can go outside or not. I mean, there's so many factors. So it's about, and to keep the process open, we have to really be present in our experience, and we have to be listening to each other, to our instincts, and to the location.